All right, Mr. Mike, thanks for meeting with me for our post-observation conference. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Fantastic. So I was really excited to get into your classroom last week and take a look at your lesson and kind of see how the students were working. In this observation post-conference, what we're going to do is just go through kind of what I observed, talk about some of those data points, talk about some areas of strength that you demonstrated within that lesson, and then also maybe we can both reflect on some growth areas and ways to improve it in order to meet kind of the needs of students as we move forward. So right off the bat, I just wanted to ask you, Mr. Mike, how did you think that lesson went last week?
So that it was a pretty typical STEAM lesson for the grade 7 class, where they come in and they do the little warm-up activity and then they work independently. So I really try to keep it where I act as a mentor for them and coaching them in terms of the skills. That I do give them the directions. I try to be very explicit. I try to be very transparent. This is what you need to do for these steps, and then they work on it. And so I think when you were in the room, I think you observed really that happening with me just being able to go around and helping individual kids. They're really all at different areas. Sometimes they are partnered up or they're collaborating, so they might be in the same place, but a lot of times out of the 14 students, there'll be 10 different levels in the project.
Sure. So when I was observing that lesson and sitting in the back, I noticed the student arrangement around the room was kind of in small groups or partners. Were they working with a partner, or was it more independent things just as a table group?
That specific activity is an independent module with an independent product, but I do put out seating cards, so it is a planned arrangement of students. There's only 5 boys in the class, and so I have one boy who has really good friends with the 2 girls, and so I always set them together. And the one girl is very high functioning, he's medium high, and then the other girl's fairly low in her skills. So, but they're not allowing her to copy, but they're supporting her kind of also in addition to the support that I can give her, and then she can look and see what they're doing. So that works really well. There's one girl that I tend to move around between the front 2 tables because she's kind of the center. Like she's kind of the social center, and so instead of having her with the same girls, I kind of move her back and forth because sometimes they maybe don't work so well together, but other times they do, and so it just really varies. And then I have the other boys, 4 boys, just kind of in the middle, And so they might switch around a little bit, but it's a pretty easy group because out of the grade 7s, it is a smaller section. Right. Compared to like in the fall when I had 18 or 19 in the same class. And so then you just don't have as many options there. But I'm pretty strategic in terms of placing the kids, but they're not always in the same place.
Right.
When they were paired up, I do sometimes give them a choice of if it's a collaborative project, I do give them some choice on who they want to work with. But once again, I'm pretty strategic in terms of not putting some students together.
Right. No, I would agree with that. I think, any time that we take a look at how do we partner kids up, how do we group them up, there's this kind of pendulum of like being with somebody that they'll be effective with versus being somebody that that they will enjoy working with, and kind of finding those right mesh points. And I think at this point in the year, you have a really good understanding of your students and kind of giving them some levels of creativity and freedom to choose, but then also making sure that you have them in the right group. So that's been great. Going back to our pre-conference before the observation, one of the things that we were focusing on as an area to observe was student engagement and how they were engaged with the lesson itself. Just real quick, Mr. Mike, how do you think student engagement was throughout the course of that lesson?
I feel it was pretty high. I'm realistic that sometimes when they're on their laptops, which they are for this specific module because they're designing things in Tinkercad, that they might be off task at times. But unless I'm right behind them, I have it set up where I can move around pretty easily. The boys are at the middle table, so they are in open view quite a bit. I do allow them, when they're working independently, they can wear ear pods, they can listen to their own music. Sometimes a student may not get as much done because they're focused on their music choice, and I will give them gentle reminders. Sometimes I do ban that in the room, just because there's too much off-task behavior with that situation. I try not to have them share ear pods, but sometimes, especially if they have long hair, that might happen. But overall, I felt like kids were getting things done.
Yep.
And with most kids, the flow. And then as I was walking around checking the progress, there was one boy in the middle that wasn't making very much progress, and he's one of the music kids.
Right.
And so we have that conversation, and sometimes I'm like, don't listen to music today, so it's not a blanket, nobody can listen to music, but, and he's like, it's not fair. I'm like, well, that's
Sometimes it can be selective.
yeah.
Right? So going back just through some of the data points that I observed, so about every 5 minutes I went through and just took a look at student engagement. I checked the clock and say, okay, I'm going to take a look at all of these different areas and see who is still working very diligently on their checklist, going through their modules, and who is starting to get off task a little bit. At 11:45, I noticed that every single student was prepared and working and doing things on their computer. I couldn't see the ones over here, but just in my observations of the one in my area, I saw that everyone had something going on. 11:50, same thing. I think they were still all working very well. They seemed to be moving through the checklist very clearly. Is it Neve? Neve, yeah. So Neve was kind of the one closest to me, and I noticed that she was just hammering through her checklist very quickly, which was fun to see. At about 11:55, there was a group of kids over in this corner that started to kind of get off task. It was like an AirPod stuck underneath the laser cutter. Is that something that happens often with this group, or how do you typically, when you see that, bring them back? Because I noticed that you kind of let them try to figure it out for themselves. It wasn't happening, and then so you popped over and it's like, okay, let's just do this and move on. Like that situation there, how does that typically go with you?
As a middle school teacher, it can vary from day to day and within a period. So losing an earpod underneath that cabinet was a new one. A lot of times when we're making marble runs at marbles, so we will go down and collect marbles like every other day, and 5 to 7 marbles are under there. So I have the kind of the tools to get under there, but they were exceptionally kind of disruptive in terms of that situation. As an 80-minute class, I think sometimes they just need that change. And so by the time that 11:45, 11:50, we're 45 or 50 minutes into the class, there probably was a need for them to get up and do something. The fact that it was an earpod under the laser cutters was unique and kind of a funny experience to happen. So I guess that I wanted them to problem solve first on their own without me getting down on the floor and grabbing it. And so eventually they were able to find it. But yes, I agree. As something that happens with this group, that, like I said about the girl that was in the middle, she is a little bit of a ringleader. And so if she kind of works herself up and gets loud, then that group tends to then suck into that behavior. And so a lot of times I'll have that discussion with specific kids in terms of if they've had a bad day or they've had a day where they've been particularly off task. I'll do that right after class, or I'll do it before the next class, and typically that helps. Also with this class, because of the block scheduling, I have them first thing in the morning every fourth day, and so when I have them right before lunch, that is a typical behavior right before lunch. Not typical, but that there's something like that could happen.
Yeah, I think that's experienced by a lot of teachers. So you catch them in the mornings, catch them in the afternoons, and sometimes it feels like you're getting two different kids. So the way that you approach classroom management changes kind of based on the time of day. Speaking of classroom management, so going back to Standard 6 of the Iowa Teaching Standards, based on classroom management, one thing that I observed that I thought you did very, very well, definitely a strength area, was your ability to move throughout the room and check for understanding on different groups and be giving them kind of that individualized attention every couple of minutes. So I noticed that you didn't spend too long in one area. You seemed to be popping back and forth. And also you made like a star pattern as you went between the different tables. So is that intentional at all to kind of make the star pattern as you go back and forth?
It might be, with this room being as big as it is, it might be a habit thing that's really interesting. I never really thought about that in terms of my step pattern, but I probably do a very similar pattern. And it probably varies from class to class too. I mean, just based on, you saw that one 7th grade group with the 8th graders, I might do more of a circular pattern around the outside, around the periphery, just to make sure that they're doing what they need to do on their laptops, if they're on their laptops.
Do you keep like an internal clock or something when you're in one area for a long time and tell yourself, oh, I need to go check on something over here, or is it more like, oh, I know that they have a question, and so I go to that?
I think a lot of times it's based on student needs.
Yeah.
And so like if they're heavy hitters in an area, maybe I'm spending more time, or if I'm reviewing a skill, like if they use Google Sites, so if I'm helping a student relearn how to upload things into their drive and then putting their things in Google Sites, I might be spending more time with that. Or when we are 3D printing, I might be back here with the 3D printers. And then, so a student will say, oh, Mr. Mike, and I'll be like, oh, just wait a minute. Sometimes they're airdropping things to me for me to put into the shared drive. And so it's just a matter of, by this point in the semester, they should be pretty used to it. Like this morning with the 6th graders, it'd be like, oh, Eli, just wait a second. And then he would watch. And then when I was ready, he'd be, Mr. Mike, can I airdrop it now? Sure. And so I think a lot of them will get that, will clue into those cues in terms of where I am and what I can do for them at that time. Some don't. I mean, they're in need. So one of my learning goals that I have on the board there is that they develop independence as a learner. And so, and as you watch, you probably saw that maybe that table here, I mean, 2 of the 3 didn't need any help at all, because they just, like you said, with Neve, they had the checklist, they were going through, they knew what they needed to get done, and they didn't need that much help, or they will wait and approach me when I'm not actively doing something else, and those kinds of students will do that.
Yeah, some other strength areas that I saw with your classroom management as well too, that I don't even know if you know that you do, but anytime that you were working with a student, you always had your front facing the rest of the class. And anytime there was maybe a moment of slight distraction or something happening with other students, you could see it as you were kind of peering over the top of the computer of whatever student you were working with. And I know it's just some very simple but effective just redirects of student behavior. And I think anytime you move to a different part of the room, you kind of always had the room in your vision, so you could kind of see what's going on. And I think sometimes when teachers are working with individual groups, we kind of get locked in on that group, and you don't hear the noise maybe happening other places, but you did a really good job of making sure that was all in your visual.
Oh, well, thanks for that. That might be accidental. That might be accidental too, but because I know sometimes when I'm back on the 3D printers and I'm really focused on that program, that it's by noise level, right? I hear something and I turn around and be like, okay.
Yeah, with the pattern as well too, I would assume that this table of boys maybe requires a lot of attention throughout the lessons, and by placing them here with that star pattern that you consistently make, you're kind of doing a buzz by of this group all the time. Well, and it may not be one where you stop and like have to have a redirect or a conversation, but you constantly are coming across them and seeing what they're doing, and I think that's really effective. Is it just little quick things on your way by to another group, I think helps keep them aligned. So that was an observation that I had that I thought you do a really nice job with. Standard number 1, going through it and demonstrates the ability to enhance academic performance, support implementation of the school district's student achievement goals. You have the lesson objectives posted on the board. They were very clear. I could see the goals on the board as well too for each of the students, so that was fantastic. The students really seemed to know exactly what they were doing. They kind of knew how to progress through that module, as well as the sign-out procedures when they needed to get up and use the restroom or go somewhere. They knew exactly where to go and what to do with that particular procedure. So I think another strength area you have is standard 1 of really focusing on kind of our building and district standards and student achievement goals. Moving through and some other question type things, when it comes to assessing kind of where they were at within that lesson, how were you kind of checking on whether or not they were progressing at the level you wanted them to progress through that module?
So with each module that they do have the checklist, and I post that early in the module, and I will go through at the beginning of the lesson the Google Slides. First, let's say I have 4 things for Inquire, so I'll go through those 4 and give them a goal, a learning goal for the end of the period. Like you need to be on number 3 at least for this, and then a lot of times if there's a specific activity that they're doing with one of those steps in the module, and there are some areas where the students will have more questions, so I can always kind of gauge if they're not asking me a question about a certain part of the module, then maybe they haven't gotten to that point yet. So I kind of keep track that way. I probably could do a better job at the end of class, and this is something I'm thinking about with my 8th grade group, because they're doing a choice project now, is that I need to have some kind of like exit card or some kind of strategy to get them to show me where they are in the process. Because from experience, there are students that are going to work their way through really easily, but then there's some that are not going to progress because they're all doing different things. And so I need just to develop some kind of into class checklist or exit card or something so they can be clear on where they are. And then if they're behind, I can give that to them the next day and say, okay, you only made it this far. By the end of this class, you need to be to this step. So to be a lot more transparent with that and deliberate in terms of, instead of kind of, I think what you saw was that I kind of had a handle on where kids were, but with a larger class and with older students also, I need something a little bit more that provides that documentation.
One thing that I think could maybe help you with that, Mr. Mike, is I know I've observed another teacher utilizing kind of a meeting between different groups of students, and they really discuss the goals they had for that lesson, right? Once they've seen the lesson, they knew this scope of a project or a module, they had to verbalize to their group members, these are the things that I need to accomplish today, this, and this. And then at the end of the day, the last 5 minutes, they reevaluated those goals. And so they went back and they physically made the check marks that, yes, I got through these things, or, oh, I didn't quite get through this last one. And I think it kind of helps them with that time management piece of like, okay, you spent 80 minutes working on this, but we only were able to get through these. Was it because we were being distracted? Was it because maybe the module was too large or too big of a chunk to take from the elephant type of situation? So I think we're constantly trying to give middle school students the means in which to manage their time and to kind of see it more tangibly than like, oh, I just got to get this all done. So maybe that's a strategy.
That's a really good idea. Yeah, I think I can use that with the grade 8s because since they're doing different things, they would be in a diverse group for, okay, everybody that's doing the coding project. Meet here, the Tinkercad project meet here, the Zombie Apocalypse project meet here, and then talk about where you are and then what you need to get to. And so that would work because then they would be in more heterogeneous groupings rather than they're doing what their friend is doing that they're sitting next to.
So going back just once again through the data that I collected, I thought your questioning was great. I thought your classroom management was fantastic, whether you knew it or not. Just the way you were moving around the room, kids were engaged. Outside of our one situation over here, right, that we handled very quickly, and like you said, it maybe gives them a chance to get up and move around a little bit. I thought that Standard 6 classroom management was fantastic. Standard 1 was fantastic. I think that you're kind of working with students, giving them some leash to challenge themselves, but then also making sure that you're very clear with students that maybe needed more help. You're obviously kind of using some variety in the ways that you were teaching. Thinking of areas of growth, right? So the exit ticket and coming up with a way for students to kind of time manage on their own is maybe one area of growth. What would you say, Mr. Mike, is like another maybe growth area within this particular lesson or within this type of lesson, something that you can think about that will improve kind of student achievement or performance?
I've been thinking about doing it like using a timer system, perhaps, because even like this morning with the grade 6s, I could tell, so it goes from 8 to 9:20. About 8:55, there were some students that were getting a little squirrely, right? And getting up and moving around a little bit more, the students like going in. And so maybe planning in some kind of deliberate break at that point, but then also the other thing I think it would be the end of class. So if you would come in the last 10 minutes of class, you'd be like, what is going on here? Because there are iPads and papers and pencils and 3D printing stuff. And so to have like a 5-minute warning sort of situation, and I know it's a little late in the semester, but to maybe start implementing that a little bit and trying to train them, but definitely from next year at the beginning to have that, okay, when there's 5 minutes left, these are the 3 things that have to be done, and to be just a little bit more, because time gets away from me too, because if we're really active, if they're printing and doing a lot of different things, all of a sudden it's just like, oh man, we got to go in 3 minutes. And that's not always enough time. Yeah,
well, with that growth area, Mr. Mike, maybe we can set up a time where you have a lesson, you want to try the timer, especially maybe at the end, and have me come in and do like a little mini observation. I can just focus on the time frame of when things are going off, what students are doing, and just hopefully give you observable feedback that you can kind of see how effective that was. And that's something that maybe I can do to support you moving forward with that.
Sure.
Awesome. Sounds great. So yeah, the next time you got something like that coming up and you just need me to kind of help see how it went, I'm very happy to come in here for that.
Sure.
Going through and just talking about this process here. So getting to our strengths once again, talking through this post-observation lesson, I thought you really demonstrated super strong classroom management strategies, which is Iowa Teaching Standard number 6. You had very much a student-centered classroom, which was standard 4, and that you could deliver instruction to multiple needs of multiple students by kind of dividing your time up amongst those that needed it the most, and those that were off and running, they could certainly kind of challenge themselves. I like that they were kind of in the small groups, very manageable groups as you moved around the room. You had a really positive school classroom culture. I think the kids enjoyed the lesson. They seemed to be very engaged. I know that was one of the observable data points that we marked down. For growth areas, like we mentioned, is coming up with a kind of a time management thing for students to really focus on how are they utilizing their time in such a long lesson. And I think there's some trial and error to that. I think it's something that you'll learn what works and what doesn't work for different groups of kids, especially at the different times of day as well too.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the other growth area, just being, intentional with, oh shoot, this is where I knew I was going to forget. I was going to forget something. So we just got done talking about, the timer at the end of the day, right? So being the time. So I'll come in a little mini observation and just kind of mark down how the timer method worked for you and what I observed from it, and then maybe we can meet and discuss kind of how it worked, how to tweak it, how to make it better. So those are some growth areas that I see that we can certainly kind of tackle here in the coming weeks. With that being said, do you have any questions or any comments or concerns about the observation process or how things went today?
No, I appreciate always have another set of eyes to look and see what's going on, and bringing up those things like my traffic pattern within the classroom. That's really interesting. So I'll be thinking.
Yeah, that's something to think about as you're doing it. I thought it was fantastic. So I will make a copy of this post-observation conference notes. I'll give you a copy. I'll put a copy in your file, and then I'll have a copy as well too. So appreciate it.
All right,
Mr.
thank
Mike.
you. Yep.